Part 2: The Case of the Secret Gold. Sonya walked through the labyrinth of tunnels that made up the underground cave system, which hid her nemesis's headquarters. She felt nervous, like she hadn't felt since she was a rookie. After what had happened to her during her last mission, she needed this mission to go off without a hitch. Her superiors had lost a lot of confidence in her after she had been captured and forced to give up the secret missile key by the most ridiculous torture method they had ever heard of, sneezing. They had entrusted her with the easiest of all assignments: find the enemy's gold, and once she had done so, call for backup to secure it. Once they had cut off their finances, they would cripple their operation. As she walked along, flashlight in one hand, map in the other, she could feel the cool dampness and stale air that filled the caves. For the first time ever, she wished she didn't have to wear the standard uniform that was required by her agency. Even after 3 years since she was first recruited by the agency, no one had ever given her an answer as to why all field agents were to wear tight, cut-off tank tops, shirts, and shorter than short pants. Her agency uniform made her Hooters uniform, the job she was working at when she was recruited, feel like she was wearing a parka. Still, as she continued her search, the damp air brought to her nose a new smell, a damp, moldy smell that was bothering her allergies. As Sonya felt her nose growing itchy, she thought to herself, there will be no sneezing this time. As Sonya turned, she found a large chamber that was not indicated on her map. As she walked in deeper, the room became filled with a bright yellow glow. Her eyes grew wide as she saw before her piles and piles of gold. This was it had to be. As she continued to enter the chamber, she reached down into her pack and began to fish around for her walkie-talkie. As she took a few more steps forward, her boot suddenly caught a piece of monofilament line that ran across the entrance of the chamber, a tripwire. As the line came free, an alarm bellowed, and a large door began to slide down from the ceiling. Sonya quickly dropped her walkie-talkie and reached up above herself, grabbing a hold of the large door and tried to stop its descent. As her muscles strained against the weight of the door, it slowly came to a stop. Sonya struggled with all her might to keep the door from closing any further. She desperately tried to move her right foot over to retrieve her walkie-talkie in hopes of somehow being able to contact the agency before her strength gave out. Right then she heard a female voice enter the room. So you're the one who set off the alarm that's making all this noise." The woman walked over to a panel on the wall and hit a switch, shutting off the alarm, and the room suddenly fell silent. She slowly approached Sonya and flashed her a wicked smile. "What exactly are you doing over there? You wouldn't be trying to steal our gold now, would you?" She came right alongside Sonya and watched as her body trembled against the weight of the door. It was now covered in a thin layer of sweat. "Boy, that sure looks heavy," the woman said with a smirk. "Don't you think you should just let it go?" Sonya glared back at her and shook head no, as she tried once again to reach her walkie-talkie. Sonya's eyes suddenly grew wide. "It sure was a good thing you caught me right in the middle of my dinner break, or else I might not have this," the woman said, as she held a pepper shaker up for Sonya to see. Sonya began to squirm as the woman slowly waved the container back and forth beneath her nose. She could see a cloud of pepper form beneath her nose. It grew larger with each pass of the pepper shaker. Sonya tried to breathe through her mouth, but could feel the pepper burn the back of her throat. But still, anything was better than letting that spice get up her nose. Right then the woman covered Sonya's mouth with her hand and forced her head back against the door that she was fighting so desperately to keep open. Still, even with this effort, she refused to breathe. She watched as the woman with her free hand continued to slowly wave the pepper shaker back and forth across the underside of her nose. Her lungs ached in demand for air as she watched the cloud of pepper grow larger. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore. Her need for oxygen was too great, and Sonya inhaled deeply through her nostrils. Her eyes grew wide as she watched the cloud of pepper disappear up her nose. The inside of her nose felt like a million feathers were going to work on the insides of her nostrils. The woman took her hand away from Sonya's mouth in time to hear her first hitching breath. Tears ran down Sonia's cheeks as her face began to contort. She thought to herself, not again. Not another sneeze. Her nostrils wrinkled and twitched against the building sneeze. She could feel her strength slipping from her body the same as the door began to slip from her grasp. As much as she was fighting against the building sneeze, her nose now needed it. It needed desperately to get that burning tickle out of it. Sonia's breath hitched yet again as the sneeze finally took control. She could feel her jaw go slack as her eyes squinted shut, and finally the sneeze exploded out as she doubled over. She could feel her ribs ache from the force of it. The door slipped from her grasp and crashed to the floor. Sonya slumped to the floor completely exhausted. The woman dropped the canister of pepper down at Sonya's feet. By this time tomorrow that agency of yours will have you mopping the floors, if you're lucky, she said with a laugh as she ran from the room. Within minutes the chamber was filled with agents from the agency. Sonya looked up as the director approached her. All you had to do was secure the gold until we arrived. Instead, all we find is a locked door. And this, he said, hold up the pepper shaker. So what do you have to say for yourself, Agent Sonya? She just looked up sheepishly and said, Gesundheit.